Hi, Tom. You've been working with street children in South Africa for nearly 30 years. Where did the idea of surfers, not street children, come from?
Hi, Stephen. Yeah, that's right. It is about that amount of time. Wow. I actually went out to South Africa with my father. It was on an anti-apartheid fact-finding trip. And I was so inspired by the people that I met involved in the struggle against apartheid. And we also went up into Mozambique during the Civil War. And I was introduced by the Anglican bishop of the Lobombo region, who lives in Maputo, to a group of street children, and it completely blew my mind. And actually, I'm ashamed to say I hadn't really clicked that there were kids living on the streets, and I was so shocked to see that when I went back into South Africa, I'd already decided I wanted to stay and just in a small way, just volunteer and try and chip into the changing context in South Africa. And I started befriending kids on the streets in the area that I was at that time, which is the Eastern Cape, so East London in the Eastern Cape. And the first group of kids that I met in about 1992 were also were incredible, and it was a real eye opener and sort of fused with tragedies. So I started asking around, what's happening with the street kids, and there was a little project that in a township in the Eastern Cape. And I actually walked, at the time I didn't realize that was, wasn't a wise thing to do. Still during apartheid times, I walked into the township and found this project and started volunteering with them. And from there, it developed over the years. At the time, I had no idea that sort of this would become something vocational for me, but it just touched a real, touched a heartstring in a sense. And I found it unfathomable that kids would have to live on the streets.
And so, what about surfers, not street children? Where does this idea come from?
So Surfers Not Street Children really came out of a project I was running back, which is the same project, but it kind of morphed into Surfers Not Street Children. And Mtombo, I started an organization called Mtombo in 1998 in Durban, and one of the programs that we fused in with all our other sports and other programs was surfing. And it was just an idea at the time. The boys were playing football and they were a bit mean with the girls and wouldn't let them play. And we said, well, let's start something for the girls. And we started a surfing program. And soon that just caught on, and it was boys and girls. And I hadn't really, I'm a lifelong surfer, and I hadn't really imagined how this pastime or this sport would sort of catch the imagination of the kids in South Africa and the kids on the streets. And so after a while, we formed Surfers Not Street Children as a way of sort of fusing the surfing, which had been such an important catalyst of getting kids into the program, with mentorship and care in the sort of a model that brought those three things together. And so we developed a team that was a fusion of social workers and carers, and also along with lifeguards and surf coaches. And that's what Surfers Not Street Children has become over the years. And it's really been an incredible journey. Of course, if a kid doesn't get into surfing, that's not a problem. We're still going to work with them. There's beach activities and other stuff, but it has sort of become something really significant in the Durban area and a route for kids to be able to get out of street life.
Wonderful. So, what's exactly happening in South Africa at the moment?
The best way to describe what's happened in South Africa recently is an attempted coup. And it's supporters of the former president, Jacob Zuma, have instigated an insurrection, in a sense, an uprising, playing on very, very real fault lines and desperation that are there in South Africa intrinsically from the past, but also continue to be there because partly of Zuma's years in power, and also, of course, the pandemic. So it was a very easy time to be extremely manipulative for their own political gain. And in real terms, what they were trying to do could be described as a coup. And so what's happened on the ground is that there's been widespread looting across the whole region of KwaZulu-Natal, which is the Zulu area of South Africa, and in some parts of Gauteng, which is the Johannesburg and regions up there. And it really has caused absolute chaos, widespread. So shops have been looted, factories have been looted and burned. There's been, in our area, the Point in Durban, which is a very downtown urban setting, it was complete mayhem. So kids were, hearing gunshots throughout the night, and everything was in absolute mass destruction. Now, this has subsided now. For a period of time, food is quite scarce at the moment. The supply lines are coming back up again, but for a time we ran out of food, and local supporters rallied round. They did a food drop, which was in itself quite dangerous to do. They did a food drop into our project on a daily basis, and then we had some other supporters who did a big grocery shop for us in Cape Town and actually flew supplies up to us. So we're okay on the immediacy of running out of food, but it was an incredible time of anxiety, of fear, of witnessing things that no child should have to see, and total chaos.
How's it affecting the children in particularly?
The children have been very scared throughout this time. Obviously, when the community is up and in their area, and the Point, people are out and looting and there's chaos, it's a real worry. Sleeping through, hearing gunshots and what they described as bombs. It wasn't actual bombs, but it was some sort of explosions in amongst the looting and the chaos that was in the area. To see, an already tough area descend into absolute lawlessness was very anxiety ridden. A lot of the kids worried about their parents who may have been out in all of that. So it was a very, very scary time. And then sort of the realization that they were running out of food added to and compounded that. So yeah, it's been a traumatic time. And, obviously in the first day or two, it was very difficult for the kids to come to our base on the beachfront, which is a safe space. And so we work with kids, street children and children at risk of what we call street connectedness. So kids that live in the local area but are very at risk of the elements of street life. And some of the kids live in the program, but the majority actually don't. And so those who don't, it was very difficult for them to access. But then after day 2, we found them just pouring into the safe space on the beachfront, and so it was a lot easier for us to access and make sure they had nutrition and care and support and counselling throughout this time.
So what are your key goals moving forward?
Well, what's interesting is that obviously our response to the issue of street children and street life in the area predates the pandemic, of course. And was very, very needed and necessary before that. We've had to really adapt things to deal with the pandemic. If you imagine that those families of the kids that we work with who do have any form of income trickling in is from what we term the informal sector. So that's hardest hit during the pandemic times. So we've stepped up an emergency program to provide safe spaces, to provide nutrition, most importantly, and we've ramped this up. This has been hard to do during the pandemic, which is also not the easiest time to fundraise for such things. Now, what the riot's done is just accentuated all of this and turned it into chaos. Now that we have the emergency supplies in and there's no fear of running out of food, what we need to do for the next year at least is to sustain this response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the nutrition program, the safe spaces, the counseling and care. That is our goal, is to get to transition out of the emergency of not having food and into, okay, the problems that COVID's caused are not going to go away. For the next year at least, and probably much more, we need to make sure that we get this rolled out. So that's our priority.
And how can people help?
Oh, that's great. The best way that people can get involved is actually financially at this stage, because the most expensive part of the program is the nutrition program, and prices have increased during COVID. Prices went sky high during the riots. Whether they'll stay like that, I think they'll come down to the sort of COVID level, which is still really high. So stretches our budgets dramatically, and we've had to upscale the nutrition program to feed around 200 children on a daily basis. So the first and foremostly, the thing we need is finance to be able to ensure that we can sustain this program for at least a year and then beyond. So we'd really value that. Somebody in South Africa may hear this, and then it's a little different because food donations and other donations in kind are also really, really valuable. At this time, though, from international areas, it's very difficult to get those types of donations in. So we have campaigns, or a campaign that we're running right now, which can be accessed through our website or through our Instagram, the link in the bio on Instagram. And that is literally to raise money for what I've just spoken about.
And the website is?
The website is surfnotstreets.org. And also for an up-to-date sort of daily update on the on what's going on, Instagram is good, which is just Surfers Not Street Children. And if people want to receive our updates via email, you know, they're not too often, so they're not too intrusive. Just send us an email address, either on Instagram or to info@surfnotstreets.org, and then we can put you on the newsletter list.
Tom, thank you so much for sharing this. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Stephen. Take care.
Bye-bye.